Hello, and welcome to History for Sleep. When most people imagine the Vikings, they picture something dramatic. Long wooden ships cutting through dark northern seas, warriors standing beneath dragon-headed sails, shields raised against the wind, axes, swords, distant shores, and villages appearing through clouds of smoke. But those famous moments were only a small part of Viking life. For most people living in the Viking world, the greatest challenge was not an enemy waiting across the sea. It was winter, a long, patient winter that could arrive before the harvest was completely secure and remain long after the fields had disappeared beneath snow. For months, the days could become painfully short. The sun would appear only briefly above the horizon, if it appeared at all. Roads vanished beneath drifts, rivers froze, forests became difficult to cross. Animals needed shelter and food, and every piece of firewood had to be gathered before the ground became too hard to work. Tonight we are leaving behind the famous raids and legendary voyages. Instead, we are going to experience the Viking winter as an ordinary person might have experienced it. You will wake before sunrise inside a timber house somewhere in the northern world, when the darkness outside is still deep, and the fire has burned down to a bed of glowing embers. You will feel the cold, waiting beyond the walls. You will discover how families prepared food months in advance, how wool and animal skins became essential protection, how livestock were kept alive through the darkest part of the year, and why a fire that never completely died could mean the difference between comfort and danger. You will see that surviving winter was rarely about one heroic act. It was about hundreds of small decisions, a bundle of dry wood stored before the first snowfall, a roof repaired before the autumn storms, a sheep kept healthy because its wool would become clothing, fish carefully dried when the summer days were still long, grain protected from moisture, a pair of boots repaired before the leather became too worn. Nothing was insignificant. Everything mattered. And as the winter deepened, survival became a shared responsibility. Families worked together. Neighbors helped one another. Children learned the routines of the household simply by watching the adults around them. There would be long evenings beside the fire, quiet meals, stories passed from one generation to another, and nights when the wind outside seemed to test every timber in the house. There would also be beauty, snow-covered forests beneath a sky filled with stars, frozen fjords reflecting the pale winter moon, smoke rising slowly for rooftops, the warm orange glow of a hearth seen through a doorway while the world outside disappeared into darkness. The Viking winter was harsh, but it was not empty. It was a season filled with work, patience, family, tradition, and the quiet determination to reach spring. And perhaps that is what makes it so fascinating, because beneath the legends of warriors and kings were ordinary people who wanted the same simple things people have always wanted. A warm place to sleep, enough food for tomorrow, healthy children, a roof that would survive the storm, and the comforting knowledge that, somewhere beyond the darkness, spring would eventually return. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable. Perhaps you are already beneath a warm blanket of your own. Let the lights around you become softer. Let the sounds of the modern world slowly fade into the background. There are no engines here, no traffic, no glowing screens, only the quiet sound of winter. Imagine the warmth of your room gradually disappearing. Imagine instead the crisp northern air touching your face, the scent of pine, the faint smell of wood smoke, the crunch of snow beneath your boots. It is the middle of winter. The year is somewhere around the late Viking Age. The sun has already disappeared beyond the distant hills, and darkness has settled across the land. You have been walking for some time. Each breath rises in a pale cloud before vanishing. Your cloak is pulled tightly around your shoulders, but the cold continues to find its way through the wool. Ahead there is almost nothing but darkness. Frozen fields, silent forests, a distant mountain ridge, perhaps somewhere beyond it, a fjord covered with ice. Then far ahead, you notice something, a small golden light, then another and another. Firelight. A settlement is waiting somewhere beyond the snow. You walk toward it slowly. With every step, the lights become clearer. The dark outlines of timber buildings emerge from the night. Smoke drifts upward from their roofs. Snow rests heavily upon fences and rooftops, and at the center of the settlement stands a long, low building, glowing warmly from within. For a moment, you stop. The cold surrounds you. The wind moves softly through the trees, but behind that wooden door is warmth, food, fire, people, home. You brush the snow from your boots and reach toward the wooden latch. The door is heavy beneath your hand. You take one final breath of freezing northern air, then you open it and step into the Viking winter. The first thing you notice is the cold. Not the sharp cold of the wind outside, but a quieter cold that has settled over everything during the night. You are lying beneath several heavy wool blankets, tucked against the packed earth wall of the Longhouse. For a few moments you remain completely still, hoping that if you do not move, the warmth gathered beneath the blankets will remain there. It does not. The moment you pull one arm free, the air touches your skin with surprising force. You draw the blanket closer. Around you, the house is almost completely dark. The fire in the center of the room has burned low. There are still a few red embers beneath the ash, glowing faintly whenever a small current of air moves across them. Above, the roof beams disappear into darkness. A thin layer of smoke hangs beneath the rafters, carrying the familiar smell of burned wood, wool, and last night's cooking. For a moment, nobody moves. The Viking settlement outside is still asleep. It is difficult to know exactly what time it is. There are no clocks glowing beside the bed, no bright window waiting to tell you that morning has arrived. In winter, the darkness itself becomes a kind of clock. You listen. A horse shifts somewhere beyond the wall. The animal stamps one hoof against the frozen ground and then becomes quiet again. Someone nearby coughs softly. A child turns beneath a blanket. Then you hear the wind. It moves around the outside of the building with a low, steady sound, finding gaps between timber and roof covering before disappearing again into the darkness. You pull yourself upright. The wooden sleeping platform beneath you is hard, but the layers of straw and wool have made it surprisingly comfortable. Your cloak lies folded nearby. Beside it are your boots. They look cold. You already know that putting them on will be unpleasant. For a few seconds you consider staying where you are. But winter mornings do not wait for anyone. Someone has to tend the fire. Someone has to check the animals. Someone has to prepare water. And before the day becomes busy, there is always work to be done. You reach toward the boots. The leather is stiff. You slide your feet inside and immediately feel the cold pressing against your toes. You pull on a woolen layer and wrap your cloak around your shoulders, securing it as tightly as you can. Across the room, another figure is beginning to wake. It is Astrid. She sits quietly beside the sleeping place, rubbing her hands together before reaching toward the embers. She does not speak. There is no need. She takes a narrow wooden stick and carefully moves the ash aside. A faint red glow appears. For a moment, nothing happens. Then she places a few pieces of dry kindling over the embers. The smoke thickens. She leans closer and blows gently. A tiny flame appears. You watch as it grows. One flame becomes two. The dry wood begins to crackle. Soon there is enough heat to make the darkness around the hearth feel less severe. This is one of the first lessons of winter. Warmth does not simply exist. It has to be created. Every morning begins with the same quiet task. The fire must be brought back to life. Once the flames are strong enough, Astrid adds another piece of wood. The orange light spreads slowly across the room. Faces appear from the darkness. An elderly woman sits up. A young boy opens his eyes and immediately pulls the blanket over his head. Someone laughs softly. Outside, the wind continues. Inside, the day begins. You move closer to the fire. The warmth touches your hands first, then your face. You hold your palms toward the flames and feel the stiffness slowly leaving your fingers. There is something strangely comforting about this moment. For thousands of mornings, people in northern settlements must have performed some version of the same ritual. Wake, listen, find the embers, feed the fire, warm your hands, begin again. The Viking world was often harsh, but it was also built around routines. Winter made those routines more important. Every piece of wood had a purpose. Every bundle of hay had been gathered for a reason. Every wool garment represented hours of work. Nothing could simply be replaced when it wore out. Outside, daylight is beginning to appear. Not much, just a pale gray line beneath the horizon. The darkness over the fields slowly becomes less complete. You step toward the doorway. Before opening it, you hesitate. The cold beyond the wall is waiting. You can already imagine it. You lift the wooden bar. The door opens. Immediately, the winter air enters the house. It is colder than you expected. Your breath becomes a cloud. The settlement outside looks almost completely transformed beneath the snow. Roofs are white. Fences have disappeared beneath drifts. Footpaths that were clear yesterday are narrow and difficult to recognize. The forest beyond the houses stands silent and dark, its branches carrying heavy layers of snow. For a moment, you simply stand there. The world is enormous and very quiet. Then you hear the familiar sound of a shovel. Bjorn is already outside. He is clearing the path between the Longhouse and the animal shelter. Each stroke pushes snow aside. He works slowly. There is no reason to hurry. Winter has all the time in the world. You step outside and feel the snow compress beneath your boots. The cold immediately finds the gap between your cloak and your neck. You pull the fabric tighter. Bjorn looks up. He gives you a small nod. Then he returns to his work. There is no dramatic greeting, no heroic speech, just another winter morning. You pick up a second wooden shovel. The path needs clearing, the animals need feeding, the fire needs tending, and somewhere beyond the darkness, spring is still many weeks away. For now, this is your world. Snow beneath your feet, smoke above the rooftops, a fire waiting inside, and another long Viking winter day beginning. The snow is deeper than it first appeared. From inside the Longhouse, the settlement looked almost peaceful. Now, standing outside with a wooden shovel in your hands, you begin to understand how much work the winter has quietly placed upon everyone. The path beneath your feet has almost disappeared. Yesterday, it was a simple walkway between the Longhouse and the animal shelter. This morning, it is little more than a shallow depression beneath the snow. Bjorn has already cleared several steps. He presses the shovel into the drift and pushes forward. The snow gives way with a soft, heavy sound. You follow his example. Work is satisfying. The snow is clean and untouched. Each movement creates a neat ridge along the side of the path. Your breath rises steadily into the cold hair. But after several minutes, your shoulders begin to ache. Winter work is rarely dramatic. It is repetitive, slow, necessary, and there is always more of it waiting. You pause and look toward the houses around you. People are beginning their morning routines. A woman emerges from a neighboring doorway carrying 2 wooden buckets. She walks carefully through the snow, following a narrow trail someone cleared earlier. Behind her, a child struggles to keep up. Another man is already carrying an armful of firewood. He probably gathered it weeks ago. That is one of the quiet truths of winter. The work you see today was often made possible by work completed months earlier. The fire burning inside the Longhouse began with trees cut during warmer weather. The hay waiting for the animals was gathered before the fields disappeared beneath snow. The dried fish hanging in storage was prepared when the summer sun was still strong. Winter does not forgive poor preparation. You continue clearing. The cold feels familiar. It still bites your cheeks, but the movement keeps your body warm. Your hands remain protected inside woolen mittens, although the fingers are beginning to feel damp. Then, the wooden shovel catches against something beneath the snow. Together, you scrape away the loose snow. It is a fallen branch. Perhaps the wind brought it down during the night. Bjorn lifts it from the path and examines the wood. Dry, useful, he carries it toward the woodpile. Nothing is wasted. A broken branch can become kindling. A damaged board can become a repair. Old rope can be reused. Worn clothing can be patched. In a world where replacing something means making it again by hand, people learn to look at ordinary objects differently. Everything has another life. You return to the path. By now, the sun has begun to rise, or at least something resembling sunrise. The sky has become pale silver, while the horizon carries a faint band of pink. There's no warmth in it. Smoke rises from several rooftops. Thin gray columns drift upward, before being caught by the wind. The settlement is fully awake now. You finish the last section of the path and step aside. Bjorn plants his shovel into the snow. He looks down the cleared walkway. It is not beautiful. It is not impressive. But it will allow people to carry water, reach the animals, and keep the entrance from becoming buried. You follow him toward the animal shelter. The doorway is almost completely blocked. Fresh snow has piled against the lower half of the wall. Bjorn begins clearing it. This work is heavier. The snow has become compacted during the night. You push the shovel underneath a thick layer and lift. Your arms strain. For a moment, you understand something easy to forget when looking at winter from a warm room. Eventually, the doorway is open. Warm animal breath rolls outward. The smell reaches you immediately. Hay, wood, leather, animals. After the cold outside, the shelter feels almost comforting. Inside, the cattle are standing close together. Their bodies create their own warmth. A cow turns its head and watches you. Several sheep shift in the straw. The animals survived the night. That matters. In winter, livestock are not simply sources of food. They are part of the household's future. A healthy cow may provide milk. Sheep provide wool. Goats can provide milk and meat. Horses make travel and hauling possible. Every animal requires food, and every mouth makes the winter stores smaller. That balance is always present. Too little food and the animals weaken. Too much feeding and the household's own supplies disappear too quickly. The Viking winter is a calculation repeated every day. How much hay remains? How much grain? How many fish? How much firewood? How long until the first green shoots appear? Bjorn begins carrying hay toward the sheep. You help. The animals become alert as soon as they see the fresh bundle. They move toward you, their hooves making soft sounds against the straw. Outside, snow continues falling. Not heavily, just a few delicate flakes drifting through the pale morning air. For a moment, you stand beside the doorway and watch them. The settlement is quiet again. Smoke rises. Snow falls. Animals feed. People work. Nothing extraordinary is happening. And yet this is the heart of survival. Not the raids that would later fill sagas. Not the battles remembered by distant historians. But mornings spent clearing snow, feeding animals, checking roofs, repairing tools, protecting food, keeping the fire alive. The winter is not defeated in a single day. It is simply endured. One morning at a time, one task at a time, one fire at a time. You carry the final bundle of hay into the shelter. Bjorn closes the door behind you. For the first time that morning, you realize that your hands are warm again. Outside, the snow-covered settlement waits beneath the pale northern sky. There are still months of winter ahead, but for now, the animals are fed. The path is clear, the fire is burning, and another small victory has been won against the cold. By the time the animals are fed, the morning has become brighter. Not warm, never warm. The pale winter sun hangs low beyond the trees, spreading a thin, silver light across the settlement. It touches the snow without melting it. The rooftops remain white, the frozen paths remain hard beneath your boots, and the wind still carries the sharp smell of ice. Bjorn looks toward the woodpile. There is work waiting there. You follow him across the settlement. The pile stands beside the Longhouse, covered loosely with branches and a woven shelter to keep the driest pieces protected. It is not as impressive as you expected. The winter stores that seemed enormous in autumn have already begun to look smaller. That is the danger. A woodpile can appear endless when the days are long. In winter, every log slowly becomes a number. How many remain? How many weeks until spring? How many storms will arrive? How many nights will the fire need to burn? Bjorn removes his gloves and examines one of the larger pieces. It is birch, good for burning. He sets it aside. Another piece is pine. It will catch quickly and help start a fire, but it will burn faster. The difference matters. You begin carrying the selected logs toward the house, one at a time. The work is simple, but the weight becomes noticeable after several journeys. Your arms grow tired. Snow crunches beneath your boots. The settlement moves around you. A woman shakes frost from a wool blanket. Two children carry a small bundle of sticks together, arguing quietly about who is carrying more. Near another house, an older man repairs the handle of an axe. Nobody wastes the daylight. There is too little of it. When the sun is finally visible, people work. When darkness returns, they retreat indoors. You carry another log. Inside the Longhouse, Astrid is preparing the morning meal. She looks toward the doorway when you enter. The fire is burning strongly now. A kettle hangs above it. The smell of warm grain fills the room. You place the wood beside the hearth. Astrid nods approvingly. She already knows what you are thinking. There is never enough wood. She points toward the remaining pile. More will be needed before evening. You step back outside. The forest waits beyond the settlement. The trees are dark beneath their covering of snow. During summer, entering the forest would be easy. In winter, every journey takes longer. Snow hides roots and stones. Frozen streams become dangerous. A familiar path can disappear overnight. Yet the forest is also where warmth begins. Without trees, there is no fire. Without fire, there is no cooking. No drying clothes. No comfortable sleeping. No protection against the cold. So you take the axe. Its wooden handle is smooth from years of use. The blade has been carefully maintained. Bjorn carries a rope and a small sled. You follow him toward the trees. The settlement disappears behind you surprisingly quickly. Soon there is only forest. The sound of your footsteps becomes softer. Snow rests heavily on branches overhead. Occasionally, a small amount falls when the wind shakes the trees. You stop beside a fallen trunk. Bjorn examines it. This wood is already dead. That makes it useful. He begins cutting. The axe strikes with a deep wooden sound. Once, twice, again. The rhythm carries through the silent forest. You take your turn. The work warms you quickly. Soon you are breathing harder, and the cold no longer seems quite as severe. There is something satisfying about this. A tree that stood silently in the forest becomes fuel for a human fire. The connection is direct. Forest becomes wood, wood becomes flame, flame becomes warmth, and warmth becomes survival. After some time, the trunk is divided into manageable pieces. You load them onto the small sled. The weight is considerable. Bjorn ties the rope carefully. Then you begin the journey home. A sled moves slowly across the snow. Every few steps, it catches against something hidden beneath the surface. You pull harder. Bjorn helps. Together, you move forward. When the settlement finally appears again, smoke is rising from every roof. The sight feels welcoming. You realize that this is one of the strange things about winter. The colder the world becomes, the more precious ordinary warmth feels. A doorway glowing orange, steam rising from a cooking pot, dry socks near the fire, a wooden bench warmed by the hearth. Simple things become treasures. You unload the wood beside the longhouse. The pile is larger now, but only slightly. Tomorrow, more will be needed, and the day after that. Winter does not care how much work you completed yesterday. The fire will still need fuel tonight. You carry several smaller pieces inside and place them near the hearth. Astrid takes one and adds it to the flames. The wood catches slowly. Then the fire grows brighter. Orange light moves across the walls. You sit for a moment and hold your hands toward it. Outside, the wind begins to rise. Snow whispers across the roof. Inside, the fire answers with a soft crackle. You understand now why the woodpile is more than a pile of timber. It is stored sunlight, stored summer, stored labor. Every piece represents a warmer season when someone walked into the forest, cut the trees, dragged the logs home, split them, dried them, and stacked them carefully. The winter fire is built months before winter arrives. That is the lesson. Survival begins long before the danger becomes visible. You watch another log settle into the flames. A few sparks rise toward the smoke opening. The room grows warmer. Outside, the snow continues falling. But for tonight, there will be enough firewood. Tomorrow, someone will walk into the forest again. The work will continue quietly. For now, however, you are warm. The winter work never truly ends, and the fire is still burning. By the time you return to the longhouse, the fire has grown brighter. The doorway closes behind you, shutting out the wind and the loose snow that has gathered along the threshold. For a moment, you simply stand there. The warmth feels almost overwhelming. Your hands are still cold, but the air around the hearth is gentle against your face. Smoke drifts slowly beneath the rafters. Someone has placed another log onto the fire, and the flames move quietly across its surface. Breakfast is ready. There is nothing elaborate about it. A wooden bowl is placed in your hands. Inside is a warm grain porridge, thick enough to hold its shape when the spoon passes through it. A little milk has been added, along with whatever sweetening or flavoring the household can spare. You sit near the fire. Around you, people begin eating. Nobody speaks loudly. The morning is still young. Outside, the settlement remains wrapped in snow, and the darkness has only recently begun to retreat. The warmth of the meal spreads slowly through you. It is easy to imagine that winter hunger must have been constant. But people living in northern communities understood something important. Winter food could not be left to chance. You look around the room and begin noticing the signs. A wooden container stands against one wall. Another rests beneath a bench. Bundles hang from the rafters, kept above the dampness of the floor. There are dried foods here, smoked foods, stored grain, preserved fish. Summer and autumn were not simply seasons of abundance. They were the beginning of winter survival. When the weather was warm, food had to be gathered, grown, caught, dried, salted, smoked, fermented, or otherwise protected. Fish might be cleaned and hung where cold air could dry them. Meat could be preserved through smoke or salt. Grain could be stored carefully away from moisture. Milk might be turned into products that lasted longer than fresh milk. Nothing about this process was accidental. You take another spoonful of porridge. The food is plain. A young boy sits nearby. He eats quickly. Astrid gives him a look. He slows down. Even in the Viking age, children apparently needed reminding to eat slowly. Across the fire, an older woman tears a piece of bread. She dips it into her bowl before eating. Her hands are rough. There is something about those hands that tells you more about Viking life than any picture of a warrior with a sword. Most survival was built by hands like these. Hands that prepared food, hands that repaired clothing, hands that gathered wood, hands that cared for animals, hands that kept the household functioning through seasons that offered little mercy. You finish your meal and hold the wooden bowl for a moment, enjoying the warmth remaining inside it. The day is already moving forward. A household may need to repair clothing, check tools, carry water, inspect the roof, prepare more food, care for animals, or clear another path. And there is another problem: water. The settlement cannot simply walk to the river whenever someone becomes thirsty. You follow a woman carrying 2 wooden buckets toward a sheltered part of the stream. The snow beneath your boots has hardened overnight. Every step makes a faint crunch. The trees stand silent around you. At the edge of the stream, the surface is covered by a thin layer of ice. The woman takes a wooden tool and breaks through it. The sound is surprisingly loud in the quiet morning. Crack! Another strike. The opening widens. Dark water moves beneath the ice. She fills the first bucket. You help with the second. The weight increases immediately. As you walk, you realize how different ordinary life becomes when every resource has to be physically carried. Water, wood, food, hay. Nothing arrives through pipes. Nothing waits inside a machine. Every useful thing has a journey behind it. You return to the Longhouse. The buckets are placed near the fire but not too close. The water must remain accessible without freezing. The woman takes a breath and rubs her hands together. Then she turns toward another task. You watch her for a moment. There is no sense of rushing, only rhythm. One task follows another. The Viking winter is lived through rhythm. Wake, warm the fire, eat, feed the animals, gather wood, collect water. Repair what needs repairing. Prepare the next meal. Then, when darkness returns, begin again. It is repetitive, but repetition is what makes survival possible. You move back toward the hearth. The fire is burning steadily now. A small kettle hangs above the flames. Someone has added another piece of wood. The smoke rises slowly toward the roof opening. Outside, the winter sun has climbed only a little. The daylight will not last long. But for now, there is food in your stomach. There is water beside the fire. There is wood stacked outside. And there are people working together beneath one roof. You look toward the doorway. Snow is still falling. The world beyond the walls is cold and enormous. Yet inside, the ordinary business of living continues. No battle is being fought. No ship is crossing a dangerous sea. Nothing will be written about this particular morning in a saga. And still, this quiet morning matters, because this is how winter is survived. Not through one great achievement, but through breakfast eaten in the dark, a fire carefully protected, a bucket carried from the frozen stream, a warm bowl held between cold hands, and another ordinary task waiting when the meal is finished. Inside, the fire burns steadily. You begin to notice that even comfort has a routine. The bowl must be cleaned. The embers must be watched. Wet clothing must be kept near, but not too near the fire. Precautions become habits, and habits become winter's structure. And for another little while, you are warm. The morning has continued quietly, but the cold has not become any less demanding. You notice it again when you step away from the fire. Warmth disappears quickly. A few steps from the hearth, the air feels noticeably colder. Near the doorway, where the wind occasionally finds its way through the timber, the difference is even greater. You pull your cloak tighter. Astrid notices. She looks at the edge of the garment and shakes her head. It needs repair. You sit beside her. The cloak is made from thick wool, woven tightly enough to slow the wind. It is not perfect. Several places have already been repaired. One edge has become thin from years of use. Astrid places the fabric across her lap. She reaches for a small bone needle. Then she begins to work. The movement is familiar. Thread passes through wool. Pull, turn, another stitch. There is nothing hurried about it. Clothing in winter cannot simply be replaced. A damaged cloak must be repaired. A torn tunic must be patched. A worn shoe must be strengthened. Every garment has a history. Every piece of wool represents work that began long before winter arrived. The wool had been washed, prepared, spun into thread, and woven into cloth. Then the cloth had been cut and shaped. You look around the room. Nearly everyone is wearing layers. A linen garment may rest closest to the skin. Above it is wool, sometimes another wool layer, then a cloak when someone goes outdoors. There is no single Viking winter outfit. People adapt. But whatever their circumstances, warmth depends upon layers. Wool is particularly valuable. It remains insulating even when damp. You reach toward your sleeve. The fabric feels thick, rougher than modern clothing, but reassuring. It is practical. It does not need to be beautiful. It needs to work. Astrid finishes the repair. She turns the cloak over and examines the stitching. Satisfied, she hands it back. You put it around your shoulders. The difference is immediate. A small repair has restored something important. Warmth. Outside, the wind moves across the settlement. You can hear it against the roof. Inside, another woman is working quietly with wool. She sits near the wall with a spindle in her hand. The spindle turns slowly, gathering thread as the firelight moves across her hands. Thread gathers, again and again. The movement is almost hypnotic. You begin to understand how much winter clothing depends upon quiet work performed indoors, especially when snow keeps people close to home for days at a time. When the fields are frozen and travel becomes difficult, spinning and weaving continue. Tools are repaired. Clothing is made. Wool is spun. Stories are told. Food is prepared. Wooden objects are carved. The Longhouse becomes a workshop as much as a home. You look down at your boots. They are leather, useful but vulnerable. Snow can collect around the edges. Moisture can enter through damaged seams. If your feet become wet, the cold becomes much harder to ignore. A man near the doorway is working on another pair. He holds the leather carefully while using a small tool to make a new hole. A strip of leather is pulled through, then tightened. He tests the sole with his hands. The repair is simple, but it may keep someone's feet dry for another part of the winter. You begin to notice how often survival depends upon preventing small problems from becoming large ones. A loose stitch becomes a cold shoulder. A torn shoe becomes wet feet. Wet feet become numbness. Numbness can become injury. The solution begins with a needle, or a strip of leather, or another piece of wool. This is the quiet logic of winter. Repair early, prepare carefully, waste little. Outside, the light has begun to fade again. It seems impossible. You remember that only a short while ago the sun was rising. Now the pale brightness is already weakening. Winter daylight passes quickly. The Longhouse grows darker. Someone adds another log to the fire. Orange light spreads across the floor. The woman with the spindle continues working. The soft movement of thread almost disappears beneath the sound of the flames. You pull the repaired cloak around yourself. For the first time today, you notice that the cold is no longer reaching your shoulders. The repair has done its job. It was not simply something people wore. It was protection. It was labor. It was stored warmth. It represented sheep grazing during warmer months, hands spinning wool beside a fire, looms moving back and forth, needles passing through cloth, and careful repairs made year after year. A cloak could travel with a person for a very long time. It could be repaired, altered, and passed along. The same was true of nearly everything inside this house, where useful things were rarely thrown away simply because they had become old. A broken tool could be repaired. A worn blanket could be patched. Old fabric could become another useful object. Even scraps of material could have value. You sit closer to the hearth. Astrid places another piece of wood onto the flames. The room becomes brighter. Outside, the snow continues to fall. Inside, the household prepares for another cold evening. Someone begins preparing the next meal. Someone checks the animals. Someone repairs a piece of equipment. And someone keeps spinning wool. The work is quiet, almost invisible. Yet without it, the winter would be far more difficult. You look down at your repaired cloak. It is not new. It is not elegant. And in the middle of a Viking winter, warmth is worth far more than appearance. The fire crackles softly nearby. The wind presses against the walls. You pull the cloak closer and settle beside the hearth. Outside, darkness returns again. Inside, warm wool, fire, and careful hands continue their quiet work. And for tonight, that is enough. The animals must be checked. You follow Bjorn toward the shelter. The door opens with a heavy wooden sound. Warm air escapes. Inside, the animals are gathered closely together. The cattle shift in the straw. A sheep lifts its head. The old horse turns slowly toward you, its breath appearing briefly in the colder air near the doorway. You step inside. The difference is immediate. The shelter is not warm in the way the Longhouse is warm. There is no roaring hearth, but it is protected from the worst of the wind, and the animals themselves create heat. Their bodies are valuable. Their survival matters. Bjorn walks slowly along the shelter, looking at each animal. He checks their legs, their coats, their food. Nothing is done carelessly. A sick animal in summer might be a problem. A sick animal in the middle of winter can become something much more serious. The cold makes recovery harder. Food is limited. Travel to find help may be impossible. And losing an animal can mean losing part of the household's future. You watch as Bjorn examines one of the sheep. Its wool is thick. The animal looks healthy. He moves on. Another sheep has pushed itself toward the corner. Bjorn kneels. He touches its side. For a moment he simply waits. Then he looks toward Astrid. More hay. She understands immediately. A fresh bundle is carried across the shelter. The sheep begin moving toward it. The sound of chewing slowly fills the room. There is something peaceful about it. Outside, winter is harsh. Inside, the animals eat. The household has done its job for another evening. But caring for animals is not simply about feeding them. The shelter itself must be maintained. The roof must remain strong. The bedding must stay as dry as possible. Water must be available. Cold air must be kept out without sealing the building so tightly that the animals cannot breathe comfortably. It is another balance. Too much protection can create dampness. Too little protection lets the cold enter. You look upward. The roof beams are dark with age. Some are covered with layers of smoke and dust. Bundles of hay have been placed carefully away from the wettest areas. The arrangement is practical. Space has a purpose. The animals occupy one part. Food occupies another. Tools hang where they can be reached quickly. You notice a small wooden trough near the wall. It is partly frozen. Bjorn breaks the ice with the end of his tool. The sound is sharp. The animals wait. Once the water is clear, they begin drinking. Even something as simple as water becomes work in winter. Ice must be broken. Snow must sometimes be melted. Buckets must be carried. The same task may need to be repeated several times each day. You begin to understand how much time winter consumes. It does not simply make life colder. It makes ordinary tasks slower. Walking takes longer. Gathering wood takes longer. Getting water takes longer. Preparing food takes longer. Drying clothing takes longer. Even leaving the house requires more preparation. A cloak, boots, gloves, perhaps another layer beneath. Every journey begins with clothing. Every return begins with drying it. A woman enters carrying a small bundle of straw. She spreads it across the floor, where the animals sleep. The fresh material makes the shelter smell warmer. Dry straw provides insulation from the frozen ground. It also keeps the animals cleaner. Yet these details accumulate. A little more hay, a little more straw, a repaired fence. a cleared doorway, a dry roof. Together, they create survival. You return to the shelter. Bjorn is preparing the final feed. He measures it carefully. There is no overflowing bucket. There cannot be. The animals need enough to remain healthy, but the household must also think about tomorrow, and the day after, and the weeks beyond that. Winter stores have to last. This is perhaps the hardest part of the season. You cannot simply consume everything today because today is cold. Tomorrow will also be cold. The next week may be colder. The first green grass may still be far away. Every meal is connected to a future that nobody can see. Bjorn finishes feeding the animals. He looks toward the doorway. The darkness has arrived. Time to close the shelter. The heavy wooden door swings inward. You help secure it. The latch drops into place. Inside, the animals settle. Their breathing becomes the main sound. You stand outside for a moment. The settlement is quiet now. Small lights glow through cracks around wooden doors. Smoke drifts from rooftops. The sky above is enormous and dark. A few stars have appeared. You look toward the Longhouse. Warm light shines through the doorway as someone enters. You begin walking back. Your boots leave a line of footprints across the snow. Behind you, the animal shelter is secure. The animals are more than food. Their health connects directly to the household's ability to endure the winter and reach spring. The cattle are fed. The sheep have dry bedding. The horse has water. The door is closed. It is not a heroic achievement. No one will remember this particular evening. But without these small acts, winter could become dangerous very quickly. The Vikings who survived long northern winters were not simply strong. They were attentive. They noticed when an animal stopped eating. They noticed when a roof began leaking. They noticed when firewood was running low. They noticed when a child's clothing became damp. Survival depended upon noticing and responding before a small problem became a large one. You reach the Longhouse. The door opens. Warmth touches your face. The familiar smell of smoke and food surrounds you. You step inside and close the door behind you. Outside, the animals are sleeping. Inside, the fire is waiting. Another winter evening has arrived, and once again, the household has prepared itself for the night. The food stores. You follow Astrid toward the darker end of the building, where several wooden containers and covered storage spaces have been arranged carefully along the wall. Astrid lifts a wooden lid. Inside are dried grains. The grains feel dry. She replaces the lid. Then she moves to another container. Dried fish. The smell reaches you before you see it. The fish has been prepared months earlier and preserved so it can remain useful long after the fishing season has changed. Food must survive the season, even when the land provides very little. You look upward. Several bundles hang from wooden supports. They are kept above the floor where they can remain dry and away from pests. Astrid takes down one bundle. Inside are dried plants. She separates a small amount and returns the rest. You move toward another storage space. There are roots here, hard vegetables, perhaps onions, perhaps turnips. They have been kept because they can last. You pause beside the shelves and think about the strange relationship between abundance and scarcity. In summer, food can feel ordinary because it is everywhere. In winter, the same food becomes precious. A handful of grain can represent an entire day's work. A strip of dried fish can be the remains of a catch made months ago. A spoonful of fat can add valuable energy to a meal. Nothing is simply food anymore. Everything carries the memory of another season. That is why the storage room feels almost sacred. It holds the past in a form that can still help the future. You imagine the same room in autumn. The shelves would have been fuller. Fresh produce would have been more common. The air outside would have smelled of wet earth rather than snow. People would have been busy bringing in the final harvest. Now the work has changed. The harvest is no longer being collected. It is being protected. Every container is a memory of warmer weather. Every dried fish represents a summer morning. Every sack of grain represents a field that once moved beneath the wind. Every preserved root represents a decision made months earlier. You lift a small wooden scoop. Astrid measures grain into a bowl. She does not fill it completely. She knows how much is needed. There is no reason to use more simply because it is available. This is another winter habit. Measure, save, wait. The household must always think beyond tonight, because winter is longer than any single meal. A meal that is slightly smaller today may mean enough food remains later. But there is another problem. Winter is unpredictable. A storm can prevent fishing. A hunting trip can fail. Travel can become impossible. A roof can collapse beneath heavy snow. An animal can become sick. The household cannot know exactly what the coming weeks will bring. So the food stores must contain more than today's needs. That is what you begin to see when you look at the shelves. They are not simply full of food. They are full of preparation. Astrid closes another container. Then she checks the smoked meat. The pieces hang above the fire where smoke has slowly preserved them. They are darkened on the outside, firm, dry. The smell of smoke has become part of them. The fire below is not only warming the room, it is helping preserve the food. Heat has many purposes here. It cooks, it warms, it dries, it protects. The same fire that keeps your hands comfortable can also help carry food through the darkest months. You sit for a moment near the storage area. The firelight does not reach this corner strongly. It is dim and quiet. You can hear the wind outside. A loose piece of wood taps softly against the wall. Someone laughs near the hearth. Then the sound fades. You look at the stored grain again. It seems ordinary, almost boring. Yet without it, the settlement would be in danger. The Vikings are often remembered for dramatic journeys, but a sack of grain could be more important to an ordinary household than a sword. A sword could protect a person. Food could keep everyone alive. That difference becomes clearer in winter. There is another container. Astrid opens it. Inside are small amounts of fat and preserved dairy products. They are valuable because they provide energy during a season when the body must constantly spend energy staying warm. Cold changes hunger. Working outside changes hunger. Walking through deep snow changes hunger. The body asks for fuel. The household has to provide it. And so every stored item becomes part of a larger calculation. How much can be eaten? How much must remain? What can be used now? What should be saved for later? You help Astrid return everything to its place. The lids are secured. The hanging bundles are checked. The storage area is closed. Nothing is left exposed. The task is finally finished. You stand beside her for a moment. Neither of you says much. There is something satisfying about seeing everything in order. Food protected. Containers closed. Stores accounted for. Winter still has a long way to go. But tonight, the household knows what it has. That knowledge matters. Outside, fresh snow begins falling again. The flakes drift past the doorway when someone opens it. Astrid closes the wooden door quickly. The cold disappears. You return to the fire. A bowl is waiting. The meal is simple, but now you understand it differently. The grain did not simply appear. The fish did not simply appear. The warmth did not simply appear. Each came from months of work, and each has to last. You sit beside the hearth. The fire moves quietly nearby. The wind continues outside. In the storage room behind you, the winter food rests in darkness, waiting, protected, measured carefully, and for tonight, there is enough. That is all anyone can ask of a Viking winter. By the time you leave the storage room, the light outside has almost disappeared. The sky is no longer bright. It is a pale gray blue, fading quickly toward darkness. Winter does this. The day seems to arrive late and leave early. There is never enough sunlight to waste. You step outside for a moment and look toward the horizon. The sun is sinking behind the distant hills. Its light touches the snow one last time, turning the surface almost silver. Then the color begins to disappear. Soon the settlement will belong to darkness. For people living this far north, winter daylight could be remarkably short. A settlement farther south might still have several useful hours of daylight. Farther north, the winter sun could remain close to the horizon, offering little warmth and little time for outdoor work. You can see that organization happening now. People finish their outdoor tasks. A man carries the final bundle of wood toward his house. Someone closes a gate. Another person checks the roof before coming inside. A woman gathers a child. The settlement folds inward. Outdoor work gives way to indoor work. The long houses become brighter. Firelight appears behind wooden doors. Smoke rises into the darkening sky. You return. The change is immediate. The fire is the brightest thing in the room. Its orange light moves across faces, walls, tools, and hanging clothing. There are no bright lamps filling every corner. Light has to be created. That means fire. It means oil or fat lamps when available. It means embers. Much of the house will remain in shadow. You begin to understand that short daylight is not merely a physical condition. It shapes attention. People learn to finish difficult outdoor tasks while there is still enough light to see. They bring what they need inside before darkness becomes complete. They plan tomorrow before tonight has fully arrived. Nobody needs to announce that the day is ending. The fading sky announces it for them. A roof that needs checking is checked. A path that needs clearing is cleared. Wood that must be carried inside is carried inside. Then the door closes. The outside world becomes distant. This makes the Longhouse feel smaller, but also safer. You can hear the wind without feeling it against your skin. The darkness becomes something beyond the walls, rather than something surrounding you. And perhaps this is why the fire becomes so important. It is not simply heat. It is a boundary between two worlds. Outside is the winter night. Inside is the small circle of light, where people can see one another, work, eat, and rest. The darker the world becomes, the more valuable that circle of light feels. You sit near the hearth. Your eyes adjust. The darker corners seem empty. Shapes begin to appear. A wooden chest, a loom, folded blankets, a hanging cloak, a basket. The crackle of fire, the scrape of a wooden spoon against a bowl, the soft movement of someone walking across the floor, a child whispering, someone coughing. Outside, the wind. Spinning wool does not require much light once the hands know the movement, but other work must wait. You cannot easily travel across unfamiliar winter ground in darkness. You cannot see hidden ice. You cannot safely cross a frozen stream without knowing its condition. You cannot gather wood deep in the forest when the paths have disappeared. So darkness creates a boundary. It tells you when the outside world should be left alone. The day has ended. Now there is another kind of time. The time of fire, the time of food, the time of repair, the time of stories, the time of sleep. Astrid sits beside the hearth. She takes up the spindle again. The wool moves through her fingers. The spindle turns, round and round. The motion is slow enough to be almost hypnotic. Across the room, Bjorn repairs a wooden handle. He holds it close to the firelight, turning it carefully so he can see the worn section. Neither of them seems bothered by the darkness. They have lived with it for years. You expect darkness to be removed. They expect to live with it. A modern room can remain bright long after sunset. A Viking household cannot. So light itself becomes another resource. You look at the fire. It is beautiful, but it is also useful. It cooks food, warms the room, dries clothing, preserves food, provides light, protects against the cold. One flame performs many jobs. The household gathers around it because there is nowhere else that makes as much sense. Outside, the darkness is complete now. You can barely see the buildings across the settlement. Only a few small points of light remain. One doorway, another hearth, a faint glow through a gap in a wall. You look upward. Stars fill the sky. Without the lights of a modern town, they seem enormous. The Milky Way stretches across the darkness like a pale river. The settlement is almost silent. This would have been a familiar sight to people living in the Viking world. The night sky was not something hidden behind city lights. It was part of everyday life. It marked seasons, guided travelers, inspired stories, and filled the long winter nights with something beautiful to look at. You pull your cloak tighter. The cold reminds you that you cannot stay outside for long. You return to the Longhouse. The door closes. Warmth surrounds you again. The fire is burning. Someone placed another log onto it. You sit down. There are still hours before sleep. But nobody seems impatient. Winter has slowed the world. There is no need to fill every minute. The darkness can remain outside. Inside, the household has its own small world. Firelight, wool, food, quiet voices, the occasional crackle of wood. You listen. The wind moves over the roof. The fire answers. And slowly the short winter day disappears completely into night. The wind has begun to move differently around the Longhouse. The roof creaks. A loose piece of wood taps somewhere above you. You open your eyes. The fire has burned lower. Then you hear Bjorn near the doorway. He is checking the roof. A storm is coming. It does not fall straight downward. The wind carries it sideways. Bjorn closes the door quickly. He looks toward Astrid. More wood, more water. The storm may last through the night. The first lesson of a winter storm is that preparation matters more than strength. No one can push the wind away. No one can stop the snow. But a roof repaired in autumn can survive a night that would otherwise be dangerous. A dry woodpile can keep a room warm. A sheltered animal can survive until morning. A store of food can turn isolation into inconvenience rather than catastrophe. The storm does not care whether the household is rich or poor. It only tests what has been prepared. You begin to see the settlement differently. The fences are not merely boundaries. They help guide animals. The woodsheds are not merely piles of timber. They are stored warmth. The food containers are not merely storage. They are time saved from warmer months. Even the thick walls of the Longhouse are part of the preparation. Every object has a purpose, and every purpose becomes clearer when the weather turns against you. So preparation begins. You carry several pieces of firewood inside. Others check the animals. The doors are secured. Loose objects are brought indoors. The fire is strengthened. You step outside with Bjorn. The wind strikes you immediately. It is much stronger now. Snow touches your face like tiny grains of sand. You lower your head. The forest is barely visible. The neighboring buildings are shadows. Bjorn points toward the roof. Snow is accumulating quickly. Too much weight can become dangerous. You climb carefully. The roof is slippery beneath your boots. The wind pulls at your cloak. You crouch low and begin pushing snow toward the edge. The work is exhausting. Inside, the warmth feels extraordinary. You stand near the fire. Steam rises from your damp clothing. Astrid hands you a warm drink. You hold it between both hands. The heat slowly returns to your fingers. The world has narrowed to the space between these walls. Inside, people gather closer to the fire. There is work to do. The storm has not stopped ordinary life. Someone repairs a broken tool. Someone checks the food stores. Someone spins wool. A child sleeps beneath a blanket. The older people talk quietly. Their voices rise and fall beneath the sound of the wind. You begin to realize that storms create their own kind of stillness. Outside, everything is moving. Snow, wind, branches, smoke. Inside, almost nothing moves quickly. People wait. They conserve energy. They listen. Every so often, someone checks the door. Someone checks the animals. That is enough. The storm will end when it ends. There is no way to command it. You sit near the hearth. The fire is brighter now. The room smells of smoke and damp wool. Your cloak hangs near the warmth. Water drips slowly from the fabric. You watch the drops disappear into the firelit darkness. The storm continues for hours. At some point, a child asks whether morning will come. An older woman smiles. Morning always comes. But tonight, it feels very far away. The words stay with you. Morning always comes, even during the longest winter night, even when snow covers the paths. Even when the wind makes the roof tremble, the sun will return. Not yet, but eventually. You look toward the doorway. Nothing can be seen, only darkness and snow. The settlement has disappeared. For a moment, you understand how vulnerable a small community can feel. There are no roads to clear, no vehicles waiting outside, no distant lights, no easy way to summon help. There is only preparation, the food stored months earlier, the wood stacked before winter, the roof repaired before the storm, the animals sheltered, the people gathered together. All of those small preparations have become important tonight. The storm is testing everything. You hear a sudden crack outside. Everyone becomes quiet. Bjorn stands. He moves toward the door. For several moments, nobody speaks. Then he returns. A branch has fallen. Nothing more. The room slowly relaxes again. Someone adds another log to the fire. The flames rise. Light returns to the walls. You breathe slowly. The danger has passed, for now, at least, but the storm continues. Hours later, the wind begins to weaken. You notice the change before you see it. The roof is quieter. The snow no longer strikes the walls with the same force. The fire crackles again. Someone opens the door a little. Cold air enters. The storm has almost finished. Outside, the world has been transformed. Snow covers everything. The path has disappeared completely. Fences are buried. Trees bend beneath white branches. The settlement looks smaller, but it is still there. The Longhouse is still standing. The animals are safe. The fire is still burning brightly, and everyone is still together. You close the door again. There will be work tomorrow. The paths will need clearing. The roofs will need checking. The animals will need feeding. The snow will have to be moved. But tonight, the storm has passed. You remain awake a little longer. The storm has changed the sound of the night. Now there are pauses between the gusts. In those quiet spaces, you hear breathing, a log settling in the fire, and animals shifting in their shelter. The sounds are ordinary. After the storm, they feel reassuring. You return to the fire. The wind has become only a whisper. Outside, snow continues falling gently and quietly. Inside, the warmth remains. And for now, the Viking winter has been endured for another night. Morning after the storm arrives slowly. You wake beside the fire. The wind has almost disappeared. You sit up. The Longhouse is still warm, although the fire has burned low. Around you, people are beginning to wake. The settlement has changed. The storm has covered almost everything. The path you cleared yesterday is gone. The fence near the animal shelter is barely visible. Snow reaches high against the walls. The world looks smooth and untouched. You pause beside the cord path and look back. The footprints behind you are already filling with loose snow. In a few hours, even those marks may disappear. That thought makes the journey feel strangely temporary. People can pass through the winter landscape, but the winter quickly erases their presence. Landmarks remain: a bent tree, a stone, a rise in the ground, a familiar fence post. These small things become important when everything else is white. You memorize them quietly. Tomorrow, if the snow falls again, you may need them. Bjorn is already outside. He is holding a wooden shovel. He looks toward the path. The animals need more hay. The storm has covered the usual route to the storage shelter. The snow is heavy. Some of it is loose and powdery. Beneath it is a harder layer created by wind. This is one of winter's quiet dangers. Snow does not merely make travel difficult. It changes the shape of the world. A field becomes a blank surface. A ditch disappears. A rock vanishes. A familiar track becomes impossible to recognize. People must learn to read the land differently. You follow Bjorn toward the edge of the settlement. He does not walk quickly. He watches the trees, the slope, the direction of the wind, the places where snow has gathered. You begin to notice the same things. A tree can become a landmark. A ridge can reveal direction. A stream can still be recognized by the shape of the land around it, even when its surface is hidden beneath ice. In winter, memory becomes part of navigation. The snow reaches your calves. Every step requires lifting your leg and placing it carefully again. You understand why winter travel can exhaust a person before the journey is finished. The body is constantly working. Balance, push, lift, step, repeat. You finally reach the shelter. The doorway is almost buried. Bjorn clears it first. Inside, the hay remains dry. That is good. You begin loading bundles onto the sled. The work is slower than usual because your gloves are stiff with cold. But eventually the sled is ready. Now comes the difficult part: getting it home. Bjorn takes the rope. You push from behind. The sled moves a short distance, then stops. The runners are caught in deep snow. You push harder. Bjorn pulls. The sled moves again, slowly. This is winter travel. There is no dramatic music, no heroic charge. Only two people pulling a wooden sled through snow, because animals need food. Occasionally, a small amount falls. You hear a distant cracking sound. Perhaps a branch settling beneath its weight. Perhaps something else. You stop. Listen. Nothing. You continue. Smoke rises from the Longhouse. You pull the sled through the entrance. The animals will eat. But the journey has taught you something. In winter, distance is not measured only in miles. It is measured in effort. A place that might take a short walk during summer can become a serious journey after heavy snow. And nearby forest can feel far away. A stream can become dangerous. A hill can become exhausting. The landscape has not changed, but your relationship with it has. You return to the Longhouse. Your boots are wet. Your legs are tired. You remove your cloak and hang it near the fire. Steam begins rising from the fabric. Someone places a bowl of warm food in front of you. You hold it with both hands. The heat feels wonderful. Outside, the snow remains. You think about the journey. The Vikings were skilled travelers. They crossed seas, rivers, forests, and mountains. But travel did not always mean adventure. Sometimes it meant carrying hay, sometimes collecting firewood, sometimes visiting a neighbor, sometimes walking to check a trap. The same knowledge that allowed people to travel far also helped them survive close to home. They knew the land, they watched the weather, they remembered paths, they recognized dangerous places, they understood when it was better to turn back. That final lesson may have been the most important. Winter rewards patience. A person who refuses to turn back because the destination is nearby can still become lost. A person who waits for better weather may arrive safely tomorrow. There is no shame in waiting. You sit beside the fire. The room grows warmer. Outside, the snow reflects the weak daylight. You realize that the storm has not simply made the settlement harder to reach. It has made everyone more aware of the land. Every path must be remembered. Every journey must be considered. Every step must have a reason. The Vikings lived with this reality constantly. The landscape was beautiful, but it was never harmless. A forest could provide wood and shelter. A river could provide fish. A mountain could guide a traveler. And the same forest, river, or mountain could become dangerous when winter arrived. You take another spoonful of food. Your body is beginning to relax. The journey is over. The sled is empty. The animals are fed. The fire is burning. And outside, the snow-covered world waits quietly. Tomorrow may bring another journey. Perhaps the weather will improve. Perhaps another storm will arrive. There is no way to know. For tonight, you are inside, warm, fed, dry. The wind has returned to a faint whisper beyond the walls. You listen to it for a moment. Then you turn toward the fire. Winter is still here. Winter has a way of turning the Longhouse into more than a home. It becomes a workshop. When the fields are frozen and the roads are difficult, people spend more time indoors. The same hands that worked outside during summer now find other things to do. You notice Bjorn sitting near the fire. The wooden handle he repaired earlier is beside him. Now he is working on something smaller, a knife handle. He holds a piece of wood against his knee and carefully removes thin shavings with a small blade. The curls fall onto the floor, one after another. A knife handle may seem unimportant, but a good tool is worth protecting. A household depends upon knives, axes, needles, wooden vessels, fishing equipment, farming tools, and countless other objects. When something breaks, replacing it is not as simple as visiting a shop. Someone must make another, or repair the old one. That means winter becomes a season of maintenance. Things that were used throughout the warmer months are examined. A worn axe handle, a cracked bowl, a loose tool, a damaged fishing net, a broken buckle, a torn strap. Nothing is automatically thrown away. You sit beside Bjorn. He hands you the knife handle. You turn it slowly. The wood is smooth where his blade has passed. He explains where the hand will rest. The shape has to feel comfortable. A handle that is too thick becomes tiring. One that is too thin may break. Small details matter. You hand it back. Bjorn continues carving. Across the room, Astrid is working with wool. Her spindle turns steadily. The thread grows longer. She does not look down constantly. Her hands already know the movement. The rhythm is almost soothing. Turn, pull, release, turn again. Spinning, carving, sewing, repairing, weaving. A young girl sits beside Astrid. Astrid simply joins the broken ends and shows her how to continue. There is no rush to become skilled. Skills are learned through repetition. The same thing happens with almost every practical skill in the settlement. You watch the younger children carefully. They are not simply being entertained. They are learning how the household works. A child who watches someone repair a net may remember the movement years later. A child carrying wood learns how much the fire depends upon the forest. Winter gives these lessons time. There is less outdoor work, but more opportunity to watch older hands. Knowledge lives in gestures, in the way someone holds a knife, the way wool is pulled, the way a knot is tied, the way a damaged board is examined before deciding whether it can be saved. The workshop produces more than things. You can see it in the quiet concentration on their faces. Nobody has written these lessons down. They are remembered because they are repeated. A winter spent watching, practicing, and helping can become a foundation for an entire lifetime. The skills seem ordinary. It is producing the next generation of people who know how to survive. You look toward the far wall. Several tools hang there. They are dark from use. Some have been repaired more than once. A tool may outlive the person who first made it. In the modern world, objects can disappear from your life quickly. Here, an object may remain because someone has repeatedly chosen to repair it. There is another reason for the indoor work. A storm can keep people inside for hours. A short winter day leaves little opportunity for outdoor tasks. Instead of seeing these hours as empty, people fill them with useful work. The Longhouse becomes busy without becoming loud. You find yourself relaxing. There is something comforting about work that has no need for urgency. Outside, the winter landscape can be unpredictable. Inside, the small actions remain under control. You can shape the wood. You can repair the cloth. You can strengthen the rope. You can prepare tomorrow's tools. The world outside may change. The work inside continues. Later, Bjorn places the finished handle beside him. He runs his thumb across the surface. Satisfied, he sets it with the other tools. Another small problem has been solved. Astrid finishes another length of thread. The girl beside her tries again. This time, the thread does not break. She smiles. Nobody applauds. There is no ceremony. But the moment matters. Another skill has been learned. Another piece of knowledge will remain in the household. You look toward the fire. The evening is becoming darker. Outside, snow has begun falling again. The flakes pass silently beyond the doorway whenever it opens. Inside, the workshop continues. Someone begins repairing a cloak. Another person checks a wooden bucket. A man sharpens a blade. Winter has created a different kind of activity. The settlement has turned inward. Its resources are being maintained. Its skills are being passed on. Its tools are being prepared. This is another part of surviving the dark season. Not simply enduring the cold, using the time, preserving what you have, learning what you do not yet know, repairing what can be repaired, making something useful from what remains. You sit closer to the fire. The warmth reaches your hands. The knife shavings on the floor smell faintly of fresh wood. The wool beside Astrid is soft beneath your fingers. The sounds of work continue around you. Outside, the winter night stretches across the settlement. Inside, people keep their hands moving. And slowly, without anyone announcing it, another long winter evening becomes part of the life of the household. Nothing extraordinary has happened. No ship has arrived. No battle has begun. No great event will be remembered. But by morning, several small things will be better than they were tonight. A repaired tool, a stronger piece of clothing, a little more thread, a child who knows something she did not know yesterday. That is enough. In a Viking winter, enough is often what survival looks like. The spindle stops turning. The knife is placed beside the finished handle. Inside, the fire continues to burn. The fire gives warmth. It gives light. It gives a place around which the household can become quiet. Someone brings the evening meal, warm food, stored grain, perhaps dried fish, a little fat, whatever can be spared. You eat slowly. The warmth of the meal feels different after a day spent working in the cold. The sounds of eating mix with the fire. Then someone begins talking. It is a simple conversation, a story about a journey, a memory from summer, a remark about the weather. When darkness lasts for many hours, silence can become heavy. Conversation changes the feeling of the room. You begin to understand why storytelling mattered. An older man begins telling a story. His voice is low. The younger children listen carefully. They have probably heard parts of it before. Still, they listen. It will be remembered. Perhaps years from now, one of these children will tell it again. You look toward the fire. The flames have lowered. Astrid adds another log. The room brightens. Shadows move across the walls. The roof creaks softly. The wooden walls hold back the darkness. You realize how much the shape of the house matters tonight. People live close together because warmth is easier to preserve that way. A small fire can warm a group more effectively than separate fires in separate rooms. You shift closer to the hearth. The heat reaches your face. Your repaired cloak rests around your shoulders. The wool is warm. Outside, the temperature continues to fall. Inside, the difference feels enormous. Someone checks the doorway. A little snow has gathered near the threshold. It is brushed aside. Blankets are unfolded. You lie awake for a little while before sleep takes you. The Longhouse has changed again. During the day it was a place of movement. Now it is a place of stillness. The people beside you are becoming quiet shapes beneath blankets. The fire has been reduced to a lower, quieter glow tonight. Its light reaches only part of the room. Beyond that circle, everything is shadow. Smoke lingers in the air. It clings to the wool of your cloak and to the timber above you. It is familiar. After a day around fire and snow, it feels like shelter. You think about how different night must feel when there are no electric lights. There is no button that can turn the darkness away. When the fire becomes low, the room becomes dark. When the clouds cover the moon, the world outside becomes darker still. People accept it. They do not expect the night to disappear. They wait. Patience changes the feeling of time. An hour is not measured by a glowing screen. It is measured by the fire, by the stories being told, by the number of logs remaining, by how many people have fallen asleep. You listen. Someone turns over. A blanket rustles. The fire gives a small crack. Then, silence. You close your eyes again slowly. The warmth beneath the blanket is uneven, but it is enough to let your tired body finally relax. Your hands are warm. Your shoulders are protected by wool. Your feet are tucked close together. Cold air touches your face. You imagine the snow. It covers the paths. It rests on the roofs. It fills the spaces between the buildings. The forest stands beyond the settlement, dark and silent. Tomorrow people will return. They will gather more wood. They will check traps. They will search for anything the storm may have damaged. They will carry water. They will feed animals. They will clear snow. The cycle will begin again. But winter is not only a season of work, it is also a season of waiting. Waiting for longer daylight. Waiting for softer ground. Waiting for the world outside to become generous again. You realize that patience may be one of the most important skills of all. Winter cannot be rushed. Snow cannot be argued with. Darkness cannot be pushed away. So people adapt. They make the fire last. They make the food last. They make their clothing last. They make their tools last. And they make the long night feel shorter through stories, work, and company. That is how an evening becomes bearable. That is how a long winter becomes a collection of nights that can be endured one by one. You lie down. The floor beneath you is hard. A layer of bedding provides some comfort. It is not like a modern mattress. There is no perfect softness. But your body is tired. The warmth helps. The sounds of the room begin to fade. Breathing, a quiet cough, the movement of someone turning beneath a blanket, the occasional crackle of wood. You close your eyes. Then you hear the wind. It moves around the Longhouse. You think about everything that happened today. The animals were fed. The path was cleared. Wood was gathered. Clothing was repaired. Food was checked. Tools were maintained. A storm was endured. A journey was completed. A skill was taught. That is the strange rhythm of winter. The season is too long to think about all at once. You cannot wake each morning and imagine the entire winter ahead. It would feel endless. Instead, you think about today, then tomorrow, then the next morning. You breathe slowly. The warmth around you is uneven. You pull the blanket closer. The settlement is silent. You listen to the fire. Its sound is soft. You think about the coming morning. Your eyes become heavier. The cold northern night continues beyond the walls, but inside the Longhouse, surrounded by wool, timber, smoke, and firelight, you begin to drift toward sleep. Another winter night has passed into darkness, and for a little while, you do not need to fight the cold. You wake before anyone else. For several moments, you remain beneath the blankets, listening. The fire has fallen to a low bed of embers. Outside, there is no sound of wind. The darkness above you is not complete anymore. A faint grayness has begun to appear around the doorway. Morning is coming. You sit up and pull your cloak around your shoulders. The air inside is cold. The fire has protected the room through the night, but the heat has weakened. You move toward the hearth. There are still glowing embers beneath the ash. You take a piece of dry wood and place it carefully on top. Then another. You kneel and blow gently. Smoke rises. For a moment, nothing happens. Then a small orange flame appears. It grows slowly. The fire returns. You hold your hands toward it. The warmth reaches your fingers. Another winter morning has begun. Around you, people begin waking. Someone sits up. A blanket is folded. A child makes a sleepy sound. Astrid opens her eyes and looks toward the fire. She smiles faintly. The first task has already been completed. The fire is alive. Someone opens the door to inspect the storm damage. Outside, the settlement looks different in the morning light. The snow has stopped. The sky is pale. The storm has left behind a smooth white landscape, broken only by footprints, buried fences, and the dark shapes of trees. The roofs have survived, but several paths have disappeared. A section of fencing has collapsed beneath the snow. One small shed has lost part of its roof. There is work waiting. You begin with the nearest path. The snow is cold and heavy. You push it aside with the shovel. Each stroke reveals the older surface beneath. Soon the path begins to appear again. Someone passes carrying a bucket. They thank you with a nod. Another person follows. The sun rises higher. You stop and look toward the horizon. There is no dramatic sunrise. The light simply spreads. Blue becomes gray. Gray becomes silver. The snow reflects it. The trees become clearer. The settlement becomes visible again. You realize how much darkness has shaped the last few days. The morning light feels almost like a gift, even though it brings no warmth, even though the temperature remains bitterly cold. The collapsed fence is next. Bjorn examines the broken section. Several posts have been pushed sideways by the snow. One is cracked. It cannot be saved. Another is still strong. Bjorn digs around its base. You help him lift it upright. The ground is frozen. The work is difficult. Eventually, the post stands again. A new support is added. Snow has covered part of the roof. The missing boards are visible beneath it. Bjorn looks upward. Repair will have to wait until the roof is safe to climb. This is the strange comfort of morning. Darkness makes you imagine what might be wrong. Light allows you to discover what is actually wrong. The settlement is becoming busy again. A child walks through the newly cleared path. A woman carries water. Someone brings hay to the animals. Smoke rises from the longhouses. The winter landscape stretches beyond the settlement. The forest remains white. The fields remain frozen. The river remains covered with ice. The storm is over. You walk toward the animal shelter. Inside, the animals are restless. They have been enclosed during the storm. The horse turns toward you. The sheep move closer to the fresh hay. You check their water. Break the thin ice. Carry another bucket. The same work as yesterday, but today there is a little more light. A pale touch on your face. You lift your head. You think about how different the same morning would have felt in summer. Then, sunlight would have seemed ordinary. It would stretch across the fields for hours. People could work late, travel could continue, doors could remain open. Now every minute of light matters. The winter sun does not simply illuminate the settlement. It gives people permission to work. It tells them when it is safest to travel. It reveals the condition of roofs and paths. It shows whether the snow has hidden a dangerous hole. Light becomes practical information. You watch Bjorn walk toward the edge of the settlement. He stops beside a line of trees and studies the sky. Perhaps he is judging the weather. Perhaps he is simply enjoying the brightness. You realize that people living through long winters must have become attentive to small changes. The color of the clouds, the direction of the wind, the position of the sun, the texture of the snow, the sound of animals, the behavior of birds. These details could tell a person what the coming hours might bring. There was no weather forecast waiting inside the house. There was only observation, experience, memory, and the willingness to pay attention. The first light, therefore, meant more than the beginning of another day. It was information. It was reassurance. It was an opportunity. And after a difficult storm, it was proof that the world outside the walls was still there. You return to the Longhouse. Breakfast is waiting. Warm grain, still steaming gently. Dried fish, a little fat. Simple food for another cold day. You sit beside the fire. Around you, people talk quietly about the storm. Which roof needs repair? Which fence needs rebuilding? How much snow fell? Whether another storm might come? Nobody knows. They can only prepare. You take a slow spoonful. The warmth spreads through you. Outside, the sunlight remains pale against the snow. The day has begun again, slowly and quietly, as winter mornings so often do. There will be more work, more cold, more darkness tonight, but for now, the storm has passed. The paths are returning, the animals are safe, the roofs are standing, the fire is burning steadily, and the first light of another winter morning has arrived. After breakfast, you return to the edge of the settlement. Bjorn is preparing to visit the river. You follow him. The river is not far from the settlement, but the journey feels longer after the fresh snow. As you approach the river, the trees open. The landscape becomes wider. There it is, the river, or what remains visible of it. Most of the surface is covered with ice and snow. Bjorn stops. He does not walk onto the ice. Instead, he studies it. The surface is not uniform. Some sections are bright white. Others are gray. Near the edges, dark water appears through narrow openings. The river looks frozen, but it is not completely frozen. You watch Bjorn take a long wooden pole. He presses it against the ice near the bank. The surface holds. He moves farther. Again, the pole strikes. The sound travels through the ice. A frozen river can look solid and still be dangerous. Moving water beneath the surface can weaken the ice. Snow can hide thin places. A recent storm can make the surface difficult to read. And once a person falls through, the cold water becomes an immediate threat. So the river is treated with respect. There is another reason to visit. The river is part of the settlement's life. The river also teaches you something about time. Its surface changes with the weather. A safe crossing today may become unsafe tomorrow. A familiar path can disappear beneath new snow. Their parents would point, warn, explain. Then, eventually, the children would teach someone else. It provides fish. It offers water. In warmer seasons, it provides a route for travel. Boats can move along it. Goods can be carried. People can reach other communities. During winter, the river changes character. It becomes a barrier and a road at the same time. A strong frozen section may allow a person to cross. A dangerous section may prevent it. The same river can be both useful and deadly. Bjorn walks along the bank. You follow. He points toward a narrow area where the snow has been disturbed. Animal tracks. Perhaps deer. Perhaps something smaller. The riverbank is not empty. Even in winter, life continues. You see a few dark shapes moving among distant trees. Birds search for food. The forest gives shelter. The river continues beneath its frozen surface. The world looks still, but it is not dead. Winter changes life. It does not stop it. Here, several old tracks cross the river. Bjorn examines them. He does not cross. Instead, he points toward a safer section farther upstream. You follow him through the trees. The route becomes narrower. Then the river appears again. Here, the surface is clearer. The current has slowed near a bend. The ice looks thicker. Bjorn tests it carefully. This time, he steps onto the edge. The ice holds. Bjorn looks back. You move forward. Your boots make a faint scraping sound. You can hear the river beneath your feet. Water moving in darkness. A river is supposed to move. Here, it seems trapped. But the sound reminds you that the river is still alive. The ice is only a surface. Beneath it, the current continues. From here, the land opens toward another wooded area. Perhaps hunters have used this route. Perhaps people travel this way to check traps or gather fallen wood. You look back once more before the trees hide the river. The white surface catches the weak sunlight. For a moment, it almost looks peaceful. Then you remember the dark water beneath. The river is beautiful, but beauty does not make it harmless. That is true of much of the winter world. The snow is beautiful, the forest is beautiful, the ice is beautiful, and all of them demand attention. You begin the journey back. Bjorn turns toward the settlement. The sun has climbed higher. The river stretches behind you, white and silent. You begin walking home. As you move through the forest, you think about how closely people must have watched their surroundings. A modern traveler can rely on signs, roads, maps, weather reports. Here, the land itself provides the information: tracks, trees, ice, clouds, wind, snow. Every detail can matter. The farther you walk, the more you notice. A broken branch may show where an animal passed. A patch of exposed grass may reveal where snow has been blown away. A change in wind can suggest weather coming from the west. A dark line across the sky may mean clouds are gathering. Observation becomes a kind of knowledge. You walk the final distance home. Soon the rooftops appear between the trees. Smoke rises from the longhouses. Tomorrow someone else may follow the same route. They will know where to cross safely. They will know where to be careful, and they will carry that knowledge forward. You reach the settlement before the light begins fading. Smoke rises straight upward. You report what you saw at the river: the dangerous section, the stronger ice, the safe crossing. Others listen. Tomorrow someone may need to travel that way. Now they know. That is the value of the journey. You enter the longhouse. The fire is burning. Warmth surrounds you. Your boots are damp from the snow. You remove them and place them near the hearth. Someone gives you a warm drink. You hold it between your hands, feeling the warmth return to your fingers. Outside, the frozen river continues flowing beneath its white surface. The water does not stop because winter has arrived, only hidden beneath the ice. Neither does life. The river waits quietly beneath the ice. The forest waits beneath the snow. And the people wait for the next morning, knowing that the winter landscape can change again at any time. For now, the river has been crossed safely. The settlement is warm tonight. The fire is alive again, and another piece of the frozen world has revealed its secrets. The next morning begins quietly. The river journey is already behind you. But winter has another demand: food. The stored supplies are carefully protected, yet they cannot last forever. Fresh meat is valuable, so when the weather allows it, people look beyond the settlement. Bjorn is preparing to hunt, and you follow him into the pale morning. Before leaving, he checks his equipment: a bow, arrows, a knife, warm clothing, rope, a small pack. Nothing unnecessary. Every extra object becomes another burden when the snow is deep. Small marks. You kneel. An animal passed here earlier. Perhaps a deer, perhaps something else. Bjorn studies the marks. He does not follow immediately. Instead, he looks around. The animal may have changed direction. It may have stopped. It may have noticed another creature. Winter hunting requires patience. The forest is quiet enough that careless movement can travel a long distance. A branch breaking under a boot can be heard. A voice can carry. Even clothing brushing against snow can become noticeable. So you move slowly. Step, pause, listen. Step again. After some time, you reach a clearing. The snow is deeper here. Several trees have fallen, and beyond them the land rises gently. Bjorn crouches behind a trunk. You lower yourself beside him. He points. At first you see nothing. Then, movement. A deer. It stands between two trees, almost perfectly still. Its coat blends with the winter landscape. You watch it breathe. A small cloud appears, then disappears. The animal lowers its head and searches beneath the snow. There may be grass underneath or something edible left from autumn. The deer is surviving too. That thought makes the moment strangely quiet. You are not simply watching prey. You are watching another creature trying to survive winter. Bjorn waits. He does not rush. The wind is moving toward you. That is good. Your scent will travel away from the animal. The deer takes a few steps. Bjorn raises the bow. You hold your breath, then the animal turns. The moment disappears. It moves behind the trees. Bjorn lowers the bow. No shot. You remain still. He waits again. Perhaps the deer will return, perhaps it will not. This is the reality of hunting. There is no guarantee. A person can spend hours in the forest and return with nothing. Yet the attempt matters. Fresh meat can change a winter meal. It can provide valuable nourishment. Every successful hunt reduces pressure on stored food. You wait. The forest remains silent. Then you hear a distant sound. Branches moving. Bjorn looks toward the opposite side of the clearing. The deer appears again. This time, it is closer. Bjorn raises the bow. He waits. The animal pauses. The arrow is released. The sound is brief, then silence. The deer runs. You stand instinctively. Bjorn signals you to wait. He watches the direction it took. Then he follows. The tracks become more difficult to read. Branches have moved. There are small drops on the surface. Bjorn finds them. He continues. You follow carefully. After a short distance, the tracks end. The animal has fallen. The forest becomes completely still again. Bjorn approaches slowly. There is no celebration, only respect. The hunt has succeeded. Now, another kind of work begins. The animal must be prepared. Nothing can be wasted. You help carry it back toward the settlement. The weight makes the journey harder, but the thought of food gives the work purpose. The forest feels different on the return. Snow sparkles between the trees. You think about how much effort stands behind a single meal. The animal had to be found. The traps had to be understood. The weather had to cooperate. The hunt had to succeed. Then the animal had to be carried home. After that, the work of cleaning, cutting, preserving, and cooking would begin. Food does not simply appear on a wooden table. Someone has carried every piece there. You reach the settlement before afternoon. People notice. The animal is brought inside. Astrid begins preparing the tools. The work is careful. Some meat will be used soon. Other portions will be preserved. Fat will be saved. Bones may have uses. The hide can become leather. Even parts that cannot be eaten may become useful materials. Nothing is simply thrown away. You watch the household work together. One person cuts, another cleans, another prepares containers. Someone tends the fire. The room becomes warmer. The smell of fresh meat begins filling the Longhouse. The scent feels extraordinary. A child watches closely. He is told to wait. The meat is not ready yet. You sit near the hearth. Your hands are warm. Outside, winter remains. The forest is still white. The river is still frozen. The snow still covers the fields. But tonight, the meal will be different. Fresh meat will be shared. The winter will feel less severe. You think again about the deer. It had been surviving the same winter, searching beneath snow, moving through the forest, avoiding danger, conserving energy. The boundary between human survival and animal survival feels very thin. Both depend upon weather. Both depend upon food. Both depend upon knowing the landscape. The difference is that people can cooperate. They can preserve food. They can make clothing. They can build shelter. They can share knowledge. That cooperation is one of the greatest advantages of living together. The meal is finally ready. Bowls are placed near the fire. The meat is divided. Everyone receives a portion. You take the first bite. It is simple, warm, rich, filling. After the cold morning, it tastes like a reward. Not a reward for winning a battle. A reward for making it through another ordinary winter day. You look around the Longhouse. Outside, darkness is beginning again. The hunt is over. The work is done. For tonight, the household has more food than it had yesterday. And in winter, that is a precious victory. The morning after the hunt begins with a different kind of quiet. A cough, a fever, a wound. The household notices quickly when someone is not well. There is no separate hospital waiting somewhere beyond the settlement. Care happens here, inside the same walls where people eat, work, sleep, and repair their tools. You sit nearby. Astrid checks the man's blanket. She adds another layer. Then she moves the bedding slightly closer to the fire. Warmth matters, but the fire cannot be too close. Smoke must also be managed. The room needs fresh air. Even simple care requires balance. The man drinks slowly. He has little appetite. Astrid does not force him to eat much. Instead, she offers small amounts. Warm food, water, something easy to swallow. The rest of the household continues working around him. Nobody treats illness as a dramatic event. It becomes another problem that must be handled, another responsibility. You begin to see how important the household itself is. If one person becomes weak, others take over their work. Someone carries their wood. Someone checks their animals. Someone prepares their food. Someone repairs what they would normally repair. The work does not disappear. It moves from one pair of hands to another. That is another form of cooperation. The sick person rests. The healthy people compensate. Outside, winter continues without concern. Snow covers the fields. The river remains frozen. The forest remains quiet. Inside, the household becomes more attentive. Astrid asks whether the man slept. He nods. She checks his hands, his face, his breathing. She listens to his answer. There is no complicated equipment, no written chart. Observation becomes the main tool. People learn to notice changes. A person who is weaker than yesterday, a wound that looks different, a cough that becomes deeper, a body that feels unusually hot or cold. These details matter. Knowledge is built from experience. Some remedies are made from plants, oils, animal products, or other materials kept within the household. Not every remedy would work. Some traditions would have been based on beliefs rather than effective treatment. But people still tried to care for one another with what they knew. The most important thing often was not a particular remedy. It was attention. Someone staying nearby. Someone bringing water. Someone keeping the fire alive. Someone making sure the sick person was not left alone. You look toward the fire. The same flame that warmed the household last night is now helping someone recover. Its purpose changes from moment to moment. Warmth, light, cooking, drying, comfort. The Longhouse feels smaller when someone is sick. Voices become quieter. Footsteps become softer. People try not to disturb the person resting. Even children are told to be careful. The sick person closes his eyes. You return to your work. You carry several pieces toward the hearth. The supply has fallen after the recent storm. You split one piece carefully. The sound of the axe echoes through the settlement. Another piece. Another. Soon there is a small stack ready. You bring it inside. Astrid nods. The fire needs to last. Winter illness creates another pressure on the household. A healthy person can tolerate cold more easily. A weak person cannot. That means the house must remain warm. Blankets must remain dry. Food must remain available. The sick person must be protected from unnecessary exposure. Small preparations become more important. You begin to understand why winter survival is never just about one thing. It is food, shelter, clothing, fire, animals, travel, knowledge, and people. Each depends upon the others. If the wood supply fails, warmth becomes difficult. If food becomes scarce, strength declines. If clothing becomes wet, the cold becomes harder to endure. If someone becomes sick, the household must adjust. Everything is connected. By afternoon, the older man seems a little stronger. He sits up. Astrid gives him another drink. He manages a few bites of food. Nobody celebrates. But the mood changes. Small improvements matter. He will remain inside. He will not return to heavy work yet. Rest is part of the process. Outside, the settlement continues. Someone repairs a fence. Someone carries water. Children move between buildings. The animals make their usual sounds. Life does not stop because one person is sick. It simply changes speed. You sit near the doorway. The sunlight is already becoming weaker. Winter afternoon is short. Soon darkness will return. The man has fallen asleep again. The fire burns steadily beside him. Astrid adds another small piece of wood. Then she sits quietly. For a while, neither of you speaks. You listen to the fire. You listen to the breathing of the sleeping man. You listen to the wind outside. There is something deeply ordinary about the scene. No battle, no voyage, no heroic achievement, just people looking after one another. Yet perhaps this is one of the most important parts of surviving winter. Strength is not only the ability to endure hardship alone, it is also the ability to care for someone when they cannot endure it alone. You think about the Viking world differently now. The stories often focus on warriors, ships, raids, and distant lands. But most winter days were probably filled with quieter responsibilities. Feeding animals, repairing clothing, preparing food, checking roofs, helping children, caring for the elderly, looking after the sick. These tasks rarely become legends, but they keep communities alive. The light outside fades. Someone closes the door. Warmth gathers around the hearth. The sick man continues sleeping. His breathing remains steady. Astrid watches him for a moment, then returns to her work. You add another log to the fire. The flames rise. The room becomes warmer. Outside, winter waits. Inside, the household waits too. Not helplessly, Not fearfully, simply patiently, one day at a time, one meal at a time, one fire at a time, and tonight at least, the sick man is warm. The afternoon passes slowly after the sick man falls asleep. Another person prepares food for the evening. But you have begun to understand that winter depends upon this quiet work. The great challenge of the season is not surviving one terrible moment. It is surviving hundreds of ordinary moments without allowing small problems to become dangerous. A torn sleeve must be repaired before the cold reaches the skin. A cracked bucket must be fixed before it leaks. A dull blade must be sharpened before it becomes difficult to use. Wood must be gathered before the fire becomes low. Food must be measured before the stores become empty. Everything is connected. You watch the woman repairing the sleeve. She turns the cloth over. The tear is not large, but she does not ignore it. She threads the needle. The first stitch passes through, then another. The repair disappears into the fabric. When she finishes, she pulls the sleeve gently. It holds. A small problem has been removed. You think about how different this feels from a world where broken objects can simply be replaced. Here, replacement is often expensive. Time is valuable. Materials are limited. Skill matters. A person who can repair clothing, tools, containers, or equipment is useful to everyone. That knowledge has value. The same is true of food preparation. Someone near the fire is grinding grain. The stone moves slowly, back and forth, back and forth. The sound becomes part of the room. The grain becomes flour. The flour will become food. It is simple work, but it requires effort. You watch the person's hands. They are steady. They have done this many times. Winter has made repetition familiar. The same task may be performed again tomorrow, and the day after. There is comfort in knowing what must be done. You look toward the fire. The child carrying kindling has returned. He places the wood carefully beside the hearth. He is learning, not through explanation, through repetition. Carry, place, return. The household teaches without stopping. Children learn how to handle tools, how to carry water, how to recognize good wood, how to help with animals, how to watch the weather, how to listen to older people. These lessons are woven into ordinary life. Nobody needs to announce that education is happening. It simply happens. The same is true for responsibility. As children grow older, their tasks become larger. A small child may carry a few pieces of kindling. An older child may help gather wood. Eventually, that person may be trusted to work alone. The household becomes a place where skills and responsibilities grow together. You find this surprisingly peaceful. The work has no deadline in the modern sense. There is no clock demanding that everything happen at a precise minute. Instead, the rhythm follows the needs of the household. When the fire is low, wood is added. When food is needed, it is prepared. When animals are hungry, they are fed. The day is divided by tasks, rather than hours. That changes the feeling of time. You stop wondering what time it is. You begin wondering what needs to be done next. Outside, the sky darkens. The settlement becomes quieter. The sick man is still sleeping. Astrid checks him again. His breathing remains steady. She adjusts the blanket. Then she returns to the hearth. Nothing dramatic has happened. That is good. In winter, an uneventful day can be a successful day. You begin to appreciate that. The world outside is harsh enough. Inside, there is no need to create unnecessary trouble. You help prepare the evening meal. A pot is placed near the fire. Grain is added. Water is poured. A little preserved food is mixed in. The smell slowly fills the room. People begin gathering. The meal is shared. Nobody receives an enormous portion. There must be enough for tomorrow, and the day after. You remember the storage room, the grain, the dried fish, the preserved meat. The shelves had seemed almost ordinary. Now you understand their importance. Food is not merely something to eat. It is time. It is security. It is the knowledge that tomorrow's meal already exists in some form. The meal continues quietly. Someone tells a small story. A child laughs. The older man remains asleep near the fire. The room feels worn. For a moment, winter seems almost gentle. Then the door opens. Cold air enters. Someone returns carrying another bundle of wood. The door closes quickly. Warmth returns. You look toward the woodpile. It is smaller than it was yesterday. Another bundle will need to be gathered tomorrow. There is always another task. This thought could feel exhausting. Instead, it begins to feel reassuring. There is a rhythm to the work. The next task gives tomorrow a shape. You do not have to solve the entire winter tonight. You only have to prepare for the next day. That may be one of the secrets of enduring a long season. Do not imagine the entire distance. Move through it one day at a time. The fire burns, the meal is finished. The bowls are cleaned. The tools are returned. The child settles beneath a blanket. The sick man remains warm. The household becomes quiet. Outside, the stars appear above the snow. The darkness is deep. But inside, small things continue. A needle, a knife, a wooden bowl, a spindle, a piece of firewood, a warm blanket. None of these objects is extraordinary. Together, they make a life possible. You look around the Longhouse. The people here are not defeating winter. They are adapting to it. They are repairing, saving, sharing, waiting, working, resting, preparing. And slowly another day passes. The fire continues to glow. You pull your cloak around your shoulders. The winter night has returned. But tomorrow will come. And when it does, there will be another task waiting. For tonight, that is enough. The winter morning arrives quietly. The room is cold. Not dangerously cold. The days have begun to change. Only slightly. The difference is easy to miss. The darkness still lasts a long time. The snow still covers the ground. The sun still remains low. Evening darkness seems to wait a little longer. Someone notices. She does not say anything. She simply watches. The light is pale, almost colorless. Winter has turned. Not ended. Not yet, but turned. You step outside. The cold is still sharp. Your breath rises into the air. Yet something feels different. The sky is brighter. Birds are moving through the trees. Their sounds are faint, but unmistakable. Life is beginning to announce itself again. You walk toward the edge of the settlement. The fields remain frozen. The river remains covered with ice, but the horizon is brighter than before. You stop and look toward the sun. It rises slowly. Its light spreads across the snow. Not by much, but enough. This is how seasonal change begins in the north. Not with a sudden transformation, with small signs. A little more daylight, a little less darkness. A change in the birds, a different smell in the air. Snow beginning to soften during the afternoon. The first exposed patch of earth. People notice these things. They have been waiting for them. Winter has required patience. Now patience is beginning to receive an answer. You return to the Longhouse. Breakfast is being prepared. The household is already busy. Someone talks about the weather. Another person mentions the river. Perhaps the ice will remain for some time. Perhaps it will weaken sooner than expected. Nobody knows exactly, but everyone is watching. The return of light changes plans. Outdoor work can last longer. Travel may become easier. Repairs can be completed. Tools can be prepared. Soon, fields will need attention. Animals will spend more time outside. The settlement will begin opening itself again. For months, winter forced life inward. Now the world is slowly calling people back outside. You notice the change in the children first. They spend longer outdoors. They run through the snow. Their energy seems endless. The adults watch them. They know winter is not finished. Snow can return. Ice can remain dangerous. Spring does not arrive all at once. Still, hope has entered the settlement. You can feel it. Not as excitement. Something quieter. Expectation. You walk toward the animal shelter. The animals seem restless too. The horse stands near the doorway. The sheep move more often. They respond to the brighter days. Soon there will be fresh grass. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon enough to imagine. That imagination matters. The household has spent months living from stored food. They begin thinking about the remaining grain. How much is left? How much must be saved? How much can be used? They must last until the new food is ready. This final part of winter can be dangerous. The cold remains. The old food stores are shrinking. The new food has not arrived. There is a gap, a bridge between seasons. The household must cross it carefully. You help carry another sack of grain. It feels lighter than you expected, perhaps because some of it has already been used. The storage room is quieter now. Several containers are nearly empty. The shelves no longer look full, but they are not empty either. Enough remains. That word again. Enough. It has carried the household through the winter. Enough wood. Enough food. Enough clothing. Enough patience. Now the final weeks require the same careful thinking. You return to the hearth. The sunlight has moved across the floor. You watch it. Nobody has moved it. Nobody has created it. The sun has simply traveled farther. The room feels different because of that light. Its movement was not abstract. It determined when work could begin, when travel was possible, when animals could be moved, when fields could be prepared, when darkness would arrive. The sun was part of the household's schedule. Its return was part of survival. Outside, someone begins clearing another patch of snow. The sound of a shovel reaches the Longhouse. A little later, another person joins. Soon, several people are working. They are not clearing snow because winter has ended. Fences must be checked. Tools must be repaired. Seeds must be prepared. Animals must be watched. Buildings must be inspected. The settlement begins shifting again. You stand outside and watch. The sun is higher now. Still weak, still pale, but undeniably present. The snow reflects the light. The sky is blue. A bird crosses above the roofs. It seems enormous. Yet the change happens slowly. 1 minute of light, then another. One morning, then another. Winter did not disappear. It gradually became less powerful. The cold does not need to be defeated. You return inside. The fire is still necessary. The blankets are still necessary. The winter clothing is still hanging near the hearth. But the atmosphere has changed. The household is no longer only protecting itself from winter. It is preparing to leave winter behind. You sit near the fire. Warmth reaches your hands. Sunlight rests across the floor. Outside, the snow remains. But beneath it, the earth is waiting. The river still sleeps beneath its ice. The fields remain silent. The forest stands white. You close your eyes for a moment. The winter has been long. There have been storms, cold nights, difficult journeys, empty paths, sickness, hunger, work, waiting. But there have also been fires, meals, stories, repairs, shared work, quiet mornings, and people looking after one another. The winter was never survived by strength alone. It was survived through preparation, patience, cooperation, and the simple decision to continue. Now the sunlight reaches the hearth. The fire answers with a soft crackle. Outside, a bird calls again. The sound is small, but you hear it, and for the first time, it sounds like the future. The longer daylight changes the feeling of the settlement. Winter is still present. Snow covers the fields. Ice remains along the river. The nights are cold, but people have begun looking forward. The first signs of spring are still small. Water drips from a roof during the afternoon. Birds become louder. None of these changes means winter is finished. Tools are brought out. Axes are checked. Knives are sharpened. Ropes are examined. Wooden handles are tested. He picks up an axe. The edge has become dull. He turns it in the light. Then he begins sharpening. The movement is slow and deliberate. Stone against metal. Again and again. The sound is simple, but the tool will soon be needed. Fields will have to be prepared. Wood may need to be cut. Fences will require repairs. New buildings may need timber. An axe is not merely an object. You sit beside him. He gives you another tool. You examine it. The handle is still strong. The head is secure. It can wait. Another tool needs attention. This is how preparation works. Not everything is repaired at once. People decide what matters first. What will be needed soon? What can wait? What is damaged? What is still useful? Winter has taught the household to measure resources. Spring will demand the same discipline. You walk toward the storage area. The remaining winter food is checked again. There is less than there was before. That is expected. The new harvest has not arrived. The fields are still cold, so the remaining food must be protected carefully. Astrid opens several containers. She checks the grain. She checks the preserved meat. She looks at the dried fish. Nothing is wasted. The household is almost through. Almost. That word matters. Sometimes the hardest part is the end. But the cold can return. A late snow can cover the first grass. A storm can arrive unexpectedly. So preparation continues. You help Astrid close the containers. Then you move outside. The air feels different. Still cold, but softer. The sunlight touches the snow. The snow is wet. Soon more of it will disappear. The fields will emerge. But not yet. There is work to do before that happens. A fence near the animal shelter needs repair. Several posts have become loose. Bjorn brings tools. You help dig around one of the posts. The ground is still partly frozen. It takes effort, but the work feels different from winter repairs. You are preparing it for activity. That difference is difficult to explain. The same fence, the same tools, the same hands, but a different purpose. Winter repairs prevent damage. Spring repairs prepare for growth. The animals will soon spend more time outside. The fence must hold. The fields will soon be used again. The paths will become busy. People will travel farther. The settlement will open outward. You finish the first post. Another needs attention. Then another. By midday, the fence is stronger. You stand back and look at it. It is not beautiful. It does not need to be. It works. That is enough. Nearby, the horse is standing outside. It lowers its head toward the ground. There is almost nothing to eat. Still it searches. You watch quietly. The animal knows something is changing too. Perhaps it simply feels the warmth returning. Either way, the moment feels hopeful. Later, people begin preparing the fields. Not planting yet. The ground is too cold, but they inspect the boundaries. They check tools. They remove damaged material. It is waiting. You walk across the edge of one. Snow covers most of it. Beneath your boots is frozen soil. Later, it may become green. Eventually, crops will rise. Yet it has happened before, and it will happen again. The world repeats itself. Winter, spring, summer, autumn. Then winter again. People live inside that cycle. They remember what happened last year. They prepare for what will happen next year. You return to the settlement. The afternoon light is stronger now. The shadows are shorter. Fresh air enters. Smoke drifts outside. That small change feels significant. The house is beginning to open. The world outside is beginning to return. Inside, winter clothing is still hanging near the hearth. But some garments are being cleaned and stored. Heavy blankets are folded. Tools are being moved closer to the doorway. Things are changing places. The household is reorganizing itself. You think about the darkest weeks, the short daylight, the storms, the frozen river, the long nights, the sickness, the hunt, the endless repairs. At the time, each day felt separate. Now they seem connected. Every task helped carry the household toward this moment. The wood gathered in autumn became warmth. The stored grain became meals. The repaired cloak became protection. The cleared path became movement. The sheltered animals became security. The shared work became strength. Winter was not simply something to survive. It was something the household moved through together. And now, slowly, the season is releasing its hold. You stand outside as evening approaches. The sun remains visible longer. The sky holds a little more color. Snow still covers the fields. It feels open. The road ahead is returning. Tomorrow there will be more repairs, more preparation. Soon there will be planting. Soon there will be travel. Soon the river will open. Soon the forest will change. The fire is still burning. The evening meal is being prepared. People talk about what needs to be done tomorrow. The conversation is practical. But beneath it, there is something else. Anticipation. The winter has not ended. Yet the future has begun to feel close. You sit beside the hearth. Your cloak rests around your shoulders. Outside, a little water runs beneath the melting snow. It makes a sound you have not heard clearly for months. A quiet trickle. You listen. The sound continues. It is small. Almost nothing. But after a long winter, it sounds like the beginning of another world.